The San Antonio Spurs finished the season 22-60, missed the playoffs and the play-ins, and uh, they did play better the second half of the season, but they also had an improved second half of the season when they were playing against very easy opponents. And second half of the season numbers tend to be a little misleading anyway, especially if you're a rebuilding team that doesn't care too much. Um, the Spurs, so they already got their sort of guy of the future, their cornerstone. Maybe someday becomes the best player in the league. Who knows? In Wembanyama, I do have concerns given his height that injuries are going to happen. Like last year, he was awesome. He was rookie of the year. He was in the defensive player of the year conversation, and that's great. And he was dominant in so many ways, but he only played 30 minutes a game. If you want to win with him in the future, he's going to have to play more than 30 minutes a game. And I also want to bring mention to the fact that he played 71 games. Do we really think that 30 minutes a game for 71 games is sustainable, especially if he starts playing 35, maybe even 40 minutes for the Spurs in the future? I have questions there. But if he stays healthy, sure, he could be, Shaq level dominant or maybe even more than that. Who knows? The way he plays is certainly unique, and, he has the height. He already is scaring people left and right from going to the basket. And, when his shot gets better, his 3-point shot, look out. But in the meantime, the Spurs, they're trying to win, and a lot of people think it's like an appeasement to Wembanyama that he wants to win. He's super competitive, so let's start winning now. But to be realistic, the West is too competitive, the draft is too good, Spurs are not winning. You can look at their sort of trades and say, well, they got Chris Paul. Great. Wembanyama has this like all-time great point guard to help him out instead of having to play Jeremy Sohan at point guard, which was like a very, very silly thing from Popovich. Side note, I mean, Popovich, it's crazy to think that he is, I think he's turning 76 in January, and he's coaching his 29th season. That's like insane, and all with the Spurs. But putting Sohan at point guard was a very, very dumb decision. I'm personally of the mind that as great as he's been historically and all time, I don't think he's one of the top coaches in the league right now and hasn't been for a while. Maybe because he doesn't care, maybe because bad rosters, who's to say? But with that being said, he certainly can get the team to the playoffs and coach them to the playoffs. But Chris Paul, for instance, who I just mentioned, he is really old. He's 39 years old, which is pretty old for a 6 foot nothing guard. Like that's kind of insane. And he only played 58 games last season. He doesn't really stay healthy. And in those 58 games last season, he played a career low 26 minutes per game. Like you can only play him for so much, even when he's not trying to win. Like, yeah, he's going to help Wembanyama become better and elevate him. Great point guard between him and Trey Jones. You really have like a point guard, like proper core now. But he's not going to be able to contribute to winning all that much. He's too old for that. And speaking of guys who are old, the Spurs picked up Harrison Barnes in the DeMar DeRozan trade, somehow found a way to wiggle their way into that trade and get not only Harrison Barnes, who is a serviceable better veteran, albeit he's 32 years old, I believe. Yeah, he's 32 years old, and he even waived his trade kicker because he wanted to play with Wemby and Pop. But he's serviceable, but he's not going to help you necessarily win. And oh, by the way, they got a first round pick swap in that deal. It's kind of nuts. But that's a tangent. Sorry, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, Harrison Barnes, like great serviceable veteran. I'm sure, you can win more games with him and CP3 in the lineup and Wembanyama, but you're not winning a title for sure, but you're probably not even getting into the playoffs. And I don't even think playing. You look at the rest of the roster, like there are pieces there, sure. Like there is a little bit of depth. You look at Devin Vassell. Now, Devin Vassell, he has a foot injury. That contract last year is ridiculous, by the way, but he's out with a foot injury. He's out till the earliest November 1st, so he's, gonna miss some games early in the season, hopefully not more. He's like a good shooter and he's like a solid defender, but he's not a guy I see ever being an all-star, to be quite honest. Ditto for Kelton Johnson, another great, like solid young player, but not a guy that I ever see really being an all-star. To be fair, I never thought DeJounte Murray was going to be an all-star, but he got there. But Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell are going to have to kind of prove it at some point. So, whether or not they stay there the long haul, don't know. Sohan, I think, could be a core piece of the future. Again, not an all-star guy, but a very good defender, can play multiple positions. I'm sure the point guard experience helped him with his offensive game and being able to facilitate an offense a little bit. he can never play point guard again, but he can facilitate an offense a little bit. So between that core, that's pretty solid. You've got Zach Collins off the bench. He's actually a pretty solid center. Not a starting center, I would say, but a very like solid center. Good defensively, good block shots, rebounds, all that good stuff. You have Trey Jones off the bench. He was definitely helpful for the Spurs as like one of their only point guards last year, but he's a backup and a perennial backup, so still good for a team like this, but not somebody that's going to be there for the future, I don't imagine. Who else do you have? They picked up Brandon Boston during the offseason. I like him. I liked him on the Clippers. Shame they didn't keep him, but whatever. Hopefully he gets some minutes here. You've got Malachi Branham, who played a bunch last year. I think he shouldn't be playing this year. I don't know what the Spurs are going to do, but to me, he's like at the end of the rotation. You also have to get their draft pick, Stephon Castle. You have to get him some minutes because if you're playing young, you got to play your young guys, especially your high lottery draft picks. Like it just kind of makes sense. Did I get everybody? Yeah, I got everybody. So that's kind of the core. And that's a solid core, like most years. But again, the West is so deep and the Spurs, they're doing this push to win a few more games, but they're not getting the play in. I don't think. Like as great as Wemby is, he'd have to put up like LeBron James-esque numbers, like peak LeBron James for this team, because I just between the Vassell injury, CP3 age, Barnes age, this is a play-in team at best. But to me, they're closer to like the 12th, 13th seed. And I wouldn't be shocked if they're 15th again. Like, I wouldn't be terribly shocked, especially if Wemby gets hurt. That could really tilt the tides. But yeah, I think the Spurs need one more year for the playoffs. And then with Wembanyama, if he stays healthy, they are going to be off to the races.